at all. 4 principles of constructive dialogue. If I were to ask you a question, friends, how do you determine that a conversation is not constructive? You listen to a conversation between 2 or more people and realize that it's not constructive. Most likely, you might have a lot of ideas. People are going around circles. People don't listen to each other. Everyone promotes his own opinions. Recall the emotions, although emotions themselves are not always unconstructive. Because if 2 people work together, lived in the same building, drank beer together, then sometimes it is scary to hear their discussions. But they easily agree and never hold any negative feelings back. At the same time, if we now turn the question around and ask you, what are the principles of constructiveness? This is just the first tool on this topic that we will talk about. The tool was introduced by Andrew Grove, one of the founders of Intel, as a part of the concept of constructive confrontation. Constructive confrontation consists of 4 principles of constructiveness and a 4-phase algorithm for solving the problem. It's the main concept of Intel, which is considered to have helped it to become a market leader. So what did Andrew Grove say? What are the 4 principles of constructiveness? The first principle he formulated is called timeliness. This is when a person comes up to you and says, well, yes, I saw 4 months ago that everything would fail. And everything did fail. At this moment, you want to hammer a nail into his head. Why? Because if you saw it then, why didn't you come to discuss it then? In other words, the problem should be solved when it needs to be solved. There's another interesting point. If you draw a timeline like this, quite often we come to our colleague and tell him, why did you do that? For example, why didn't you run the test yesterday? What do we expect? That he would get into a time machine, rush back to yesterday, run the test there, and then come back to us with the finished result? Probably not. But in fact, we're peeking into the past. We find out why did it happen like this yesterday. Also, the fact alone that the tests were not run yesterday is neither good nor bad. It's just a fact. I, for example, haven't run tests for 5 years, and it doesn't bother anyone. There is no problem with this. Tests are not run happen. It's a fact. This is not a problem. A problem, for example, that we can't provide our product to the customer. The customer effs and blinds, loses money. This is already a problem. This problem exists in the present. And in fact, this is what's necessary to solve. Yesterday, it wasn't done. No big deal. Let's do something now. And when we solve this problem with a person, and by the way, people solve the problems in the present better because nothing can be changed in the past. When we ask about the past, people assume that we are trying to find someone to blame. And when we solve a problem in the present, we are not looking for a guilty person. We are solving a very specific problem. And when it's already solved, then what we do next? We look into the future. What should we do now to avoid such problems in the future? And only at this stage, we can go back to the past and see why the test didn't run there, why it wasn't done. But please note that here's the person has a completely different motivation to listen because we have observed the principle of timeliness. There is a problem that exists now. We have solved it first. And the next step right here is to discuss how we can make sure that such situations don't happen again in the future. In smart books, this is called focus on the present and future. It sounds very unnatural, but in fact, this is exactly what this very diagram is about. It's exactly this principle. The second principle is the principle of targeting. When 2 people meet in the smoking room and one says to the other, the boss has come up with some bullshit again, moving to a new office again, moving this cocktail for the 3rd time in a year somewhere. How many times we have to do this? This is not entirely constructive because the problem should be solved with someone who's capable to solve it. With whom you can solve the problem of moving to a new office? Obviously with the management. That is, if after the conversation in the smoking room, someone had gone to the management to solve this problem of moving and transferring these cacti, then a constructive thing would have happened. The third principle is the availability of facts and data. Facts, data, and some arguments. Because sometimes people honestly don't see what the problem is. Everyone has their own previous experience that worked well. Why did we come up to him to talk about some kind of a problem? In his previous experience, this was not a problem at all. What facts and data can we use to determine that there is a problem? A fact is a stubborn thing and hard to argue with. The fact is either there or not. If you ask about something, it is a fact or not. This is a good topic to discuss. Well, for example, Sasha Rove is sitting on a chair. Is it a fact or not? This is a fact. But what if an employee seems to behave somewhat inadequate? Is this a fact? No. Imagine that this is a homework assignment about how you differentiate between facts and data. But a fact is a hard thing to argue with. And it should be a constructive dialogue. And the fourth principle, the purpose of any constructive dialogue is intention. The intention to solve a problem or situation. In other words, we always solve a problem without looking for someone to blame. Often people start to defend themselves instinctively. If you ask, why didn't you run the test yesterday? Naturally, the person answering this question could explain why he didn't run the test. There may be many reasons. For example, I received the request late yesterday. I was sent a product late. Smart people always have many excuses. What does it mean? It's not my fault. It's their fault. He gets a feeling that we are blaming him. But we have to solve the problem or situation in the present. These are the four principles that Andrew Grove once formulated. And the principles themselves are not bad, but they don't answer the question how to solve the problem with people. That is, principles, of course, must be followed. It is clear, but how? The answer to this question is given by an algorithm, a 4-phase algorithm for solving problems with people.